Welcome to another episode of Peers Over Beers, your favorite digital and social evangelist podcast with your industry veteran hosts, Chris Detzel. This podcast starts now.
Welcome to another Peers Over Beers. My name is Chris Detzel, and we now have a long-timer, Nicole Saunders, here. So, Nicole, how are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me back again, Chris.
Well, thanks for coming back. I really appreciate it. We've had a lot of really good guests, and one of my favorite guests, not really a guest, long-timer, is you. So you keep coming back, and we keep talking about some smart things. So today, I know we had a pre-show, and maybe I should record some of these pre-shows because it's gonna. and
we get all the good ideas out ahead of time, huh?
Yeah, why not? But we kind of talked about this kind of professional development, education. So one was, looking at professional development for maybe your staff, but also for yourself. And how do we do that? And so I think that's going to be a good discussion today. What do you think?
I agree. I know it's been top of mind for me. We've been working on professional development plans at Zendesk and with my team and talking a lot about what are the skill sets that people need to be successful for this job? What are the skill sets that people need to be successful for working sort of in any corporate environment? Mm-hmm. And how do you build those skills and how do you get there? And some things are really direct, right? Like everybody needs to know how to build and present a good slide deck. And there are millions of YouTube videos out there and sample slides. And, that's something where it's like, okay, I'm going to watch this video and I'm going to practice and then I'm going to give some presentations and I'm going to build up my deck skills. But then there's more nebulous things, right? And it's sort of like all the stuff we were talking about in terms of, how do you build up your community management knowledge more broadly, and how do you do those things? So.
Yeah, I think there's probably a lot of ways to it. I've never seen an organization from a community standpoint, do that specifically. But like you said, there's things like C-School. There's things like what's the other one you mentioned?
The CMX Community MBA.
Oh, that's right. And so there are things out there to kind of help you understand community management as a whole. My assumption is that they'll talk about content strategy, engagement strategy, and maybe even how to build a community and things like that. And but something that I always said is a lot of times, especially for like you and me, that have been in the industry for a long time, what are things that we can do? And I think sometimes you just have to push yourself to go out there and do things like present outside of certainly presenting in front of your company. So that's always a little bit scary if you're a first time presenter. It's just a matter of doing it. You're going to mess up some, you're going to, but you'll get a lot of good feedback. It's sometimes scary to speak in public, and sometimes you got to push yourself to maybe even go outside of that and talk about community management. And that's a little scary because then you have peers judging you. So you think, about how you, maybe you do sometimes, right? And
maybe, although I would say most of the time people are so supportive, especially in the community management world. I remember the first time I got up and gave a presentation at CMX, and man, I will tell you, I worked on that presentation for months. Yeah. Like my husband had it memorized by the time I got on stage because I had done it so many times. And I was still tweaking slides the night before the presentation and stuff. And you get up there and then you just realize like, all of these people want you to be successful.
Yeah.
They want to hear what you have to say. They're not going to judge if you trip up your words or forget one little piece. And unless you're saying something really incredibly controversial, probably, you're sharing stuff that's really going to help other people. And it's so important to keep that in mind. I think when most of us think about like presenting or speaking at a conference, we're like, oh my God, I have to be an absolute expert and my case has to be bulletproof. And like, it really doesn't. You just need to kind of share your perspective and how you do something. And chances are you will blow someone's mind in the audience, No,
I agree. And you're right. But sometimes we have this thinking around, well, I'm in front of my peers and, they are going to judge me. Oh my gosh. The reality,
know if I say something wrong.
Yeah. And the reality is that they probably won't, but still, you've got to get out there and even if you do poorly, which a lot of times you won't, if you prepare and you do pretty well, I'm not saying you shouldn't just get out there and just start speaking and on a topic and not be prepared. I think that's part of, getting out there and building out your skill set and kind of presenting and that kind of stuff. So I don't know. I mean, that's my thinking around how somebody like myself or somebody like you is, maybe teaching a class, maybe getting out there presenting or, those kinds of things. Certainly going to these new conferences that are popping up, around the US. I mean, I saw this conference that's coming up in April that just got on my calendar not on my calendar, but on LinkedIn, and say, "Hey, Chris, are you going to this conference?" And I was like, "I don't know anything about it." And I started looking, and it's like all these community people are getting together. I was like, "Oh my God, I don't know. I mean, I won't be able to make it this time, but still, there's all kinds of things popping up."
Yeah, well, one of the things that I love about sort of the new, more virtual world is that there are a lot more opportunities to do that stuff. It used to be every year I'd like look at the conference calendar and I'd pick like the one that I wanted to like try to get my company to pay for me to go to. And like that was it. That was my thing for the year.
Yeah,
and now that a lot of these are virtual, I just went to Topia, had a community unconference on Wednesday, and I went and participated in that. And all I had to do was block a couple hours on my calendar, and I got to go connect with the people that I've always wanted to meet. I ran into Alex Angel from Comstore and Jamie Cantrell and a couple of other like really cool community professionals that I've been following on LinkedIn and Twitter and things like that. I suddenly like got to go talk to them. So I think it's so important to get out there and network. And it always surprises me how many people don't do that, because I know I've gained so much value from getting out there and talking to other community professionals and hearing how they do things at their organization, and just kind of getting, it's so funny. I always talk about this in my own community, right? It's getting those real world experiences from other people that are doing the thing that you're trying to do, and hearing about it. I also think, and we were talking about this a little bit in the pre-show, you really become an expert at something when you start to teach it. There have been so many times in my life. I've always loved teaching. I thought about being a teacher earlier in my life. And so typically when I learn a skill, what tends to happen is like, I go try something out. I like it. I learn it. And then I eventually get certified and start teaching it. I did this with martial arts as a kid. I've done this with music. I was taking a class at my gym for a while, and now I teach a dance aerobics class because of it. And
nice.
But the thing is that like you can get to a really high level, and then once you start teaching it, you get to this whole new level. And there's something about the way that you process the information when you start trying to teach it to somebody else that really helps your brain like lock it in, formulate your view. And so I encourage everybody to try to teach something that you want to be really good at to someone else, even if it's just like, "Hey mom, can I like teach you the basics of community management for an hour?" The process of trying to explain it to somebody else will make a difference in your own comprehension of it. Your mom
might not like it, but
yeah, she may not be. She was pretty pumped when I taught her about Twitter, though.
Well, that's a little different, right? Because everybody has some interest in Twitter,
right?
So you sang and taught singing, or what? Or played an instrument, or?
Yeah, I play the guitar and I sing, and I've never taught super formally, but I've taught people a few guitar chords here and there, or some basic vocal techniques and things like that. And
maybe we'll have you like during one of these shows right before, or podcast, we'll just have you start playing and singing a song or something. What do you think?
We can do that. Come up with a theme song. So I actually did this for the Zendesk holiday video in 2020, right? So this was the first year we couldn't all get together in person to have like one of those amazing holiday parties that tech companies like to do. And so we did a virtual one, and they were trying to figure out like, how do we make this fun, and how do we like show off the personality of our employees? And so they asked everybody to make like little short video clips of like, something I'm grateful for, something I learned this year. And I decided to write a song about
awesome.
surviving 2020 at Zendesk, and it ended up being like the like in the middle of the video with a whole photo montage laid over it and everything like that. And
how long is it?
Now the song, it was like 2 minutes.
Oh, you should send it over to me. I'll push it out here on the YouTube, and I'll push it out on the podcast if you want.
There you go. Well, it's a bunch of inside jokes at Zendesk, so it might not make sense to everybody else, but it was super fun, right? And it was a cool opportunity to like bring myself to work in a more authentic way. And a lot of people didn't know that side of me, so it was funny.
Wow, that's pretty cool. I love it. I'm seriously gonna have you write a song about Peers Over Beers in a podcast or something like that, and I don't know, whatever you want to do. You should think about that.
All right.
1 minute or 2 is fine.
Yeah, I usually have my guitar propped up right here. It's just,
I think I remember seeing that before.
Yeah, it's been in its case for a couple weeks here, but probably time to pull back out.
Yeah, think about it. Just think about it and let me know.
All right.
All right. So back to the
Yeah,
topic
back on
of learning
topic.
and teaching and things like that. But no, that was fun. I kind of enjoy that. Love to hear it. Um, you know, as I kind of think about Reltio as an organization and their training, and even when you think about when somebody onboards for the first time, is something that we're working on in a big way. Training, I'm not sure, and more specifically community management. I think that's going to be on me. So, because as I hire, I'm going to have to figure out, what's the best way to kind of do that. And I think in the beginning, it's probably just going to be more of hands-on type stuff. If it's, if they have some years of experience, that's great. Let's figure out what that is, and then try to, hone in on the things that we're trying to do here at Reltio from a community standpoint. But as you kind of grow, I assume that you're gonna have to do something a little bit different, because it can't be hands-on with everybody.
Yeah.
I
I've done
don't
some
know.
things like with my team. We've done a lot of like, let's all read the same book at the same time, right? So like maybe we'll take, you had Rich Millington on, I think last week. So we all picked up one of his books and read it and sort of literally did like a book club at work where we'd like, okay, we're all gonna read chapter 1 and we're gonna talk about it in the team meeting on Monday. And we'd had different people lead the discussions on each section, and it's kind of cool to go through those kinds of processes with your team. And it's a good way to like kind of do that education a little bit more.
It's kind of fun.
Where you don't have to be hands-on with each person, right? But you can kind of do group learning. And so like we did that with the CMX MBA program last year.
Yeah.
We all went through it together.
Oh, wow.
And it was good because it got us some discussion. And I think it's also a good way to make sure you're leveling up the whole team sort of at equal point, right? Everybody's hearing the same information. You're all engaging in the same conversation. So those kinds of things can be really handy. But yeah, it's interesting. Like Zendesk offers a ton of like mentorship opportunities and leadership programs, and there's all sorts of professional development stuff. But when it comes to specifically community management, I've definitely had to kind of go seek that out. It's one of the things when you're sort of the tip of the spear of the organization, if you will, is like having to figure out what are those resources and who are those experts you can bring in and that kind of thing.
And I think that's very interesting because in how you've done that, that's really a great way to kind of get everybody engaged and involved, but also it's like a team exercise. If you had to make me read books, though, I'd be like, oh, I'd have to read the.
Well, I sent him all the books for Christmas, and then I felt like I was a really lame boss, just sending like work-related stuff. So I followed it up with some treats. I didn't want it to be like, Merry Christmas, here's more things to do for work.
Read it now. Read it before the end of the year. So we can just
with your time off, please be thinking about work. No, it's definitely not what you want to set people up for. But yeah, I think the other thing that I've really discovered, thinking about going in and teaching there, is sometimes we don't realize how much we know about a topic until you try to teach it to somebody that doesn't have the same knowledge and experience. And I've hired some really amazing people on my team and some very experienced community managers, and it's easy for me to assume that they all have the same context and frame of reference that I do because they're also experienced. But it was interesting, sometimes you get into these conversations and go, oh, yeah, like 3 of the people on my team have read this book, but 2 people haven't. And so they have a different frame of reference for a certain conversation or a certain process or workflow. And so it is helpful to just kind of get everybody on the same page and make sure and, kind of go through it step by step.
And I think as a leader, you're trying to kind of get people to think like you in a way, and I'm not saying that they don't have their own ways of doing certain things, but you want to make sure that when you look at the strategy and the focus and where we should put our efforts and time, and you want to get them on that same page and thinking about whether it's engagement, content strategy, and all that kind of stuff. And that if it's a support community, then we're writing stuff about support stuff, not thought leadership, because not saying that that's not important, but it's not that type of community. Or I don't know, just making sure that we've got the same goals, we're focused on the same things, and think like Nicole in a way without saying think like Nicole necessarily.
Well,
I don't know.
I think it's important to have like a common, like I said, frame of reference or framework and common vocabulary. It's also super valuable to have different points of view.
Sure.
I have one person on my team who almost always brings in a different perspective than the rest of us. And I'm so grateful for that. Because it's so helpful to have somebody that is looking at things from a different angle, and it's making us question our decisions and make sure that we're really validating that what we're doing is the thing we want to be doing. But to your point, you do want to have some things where it's like you've got a common ground to work from. Or when I say, hey, I need a strategic outline, everybody knows what that means.
Yeah.
And that was like something that I realized at one point where I was like, okay, everybody, I want your strategic outlines by this date. And
they're like,
not everybody knew what that meant, right? And like, well, what does that need to include? And so some people approach it from a more tactical level, and some people approach it from a more philosophical level. And so we kind of had to have a common understanding. Hey, when we talk about putting together a strategy, what does that actually mean? What does that need to include? What level of fidelity are we talking about?
It's a good point, because that happens to me all the time. I'll be on these, hey, Chris, I need your, your executive overview and your data around community. And I'm thinking, well, this is a new thing. So how is everybody else doing this executive overview? So I'm looking at, how the customer's doing it, how marketing's doing it, how product's doing it, because, I can have access to kind of their stuff. And generally I'm not the first one to have to go do it. So I was like, all right, it looks like this. So I'm going to try it and see what happens, and, you'll get feedback. But it's a good point, because things change a lot. But when you start thinking about the language of, I need your strategic outlines. Well, what does that look like? How do you do that? Because it's not, I make shit up all the time, to be honest. Like I just assume, okay, well, there's nobody here to guide me to do this, so I'm going to try it, and, you try to be smart and look at what others have done. But you're right. I mean, it's a extremely good point, but I think it also helps them to know what a strategic outline is. And then when they have to go do something, when they level up, or when they have to get in front of, a group of people to do it, then they start talking about it, and start people start having the same language as them eventually, I think, but I like that.
And something that's so important is to be okay asking those questions and looking for those examples. Earlier in my career, I felt like part of being an expert was like, I have to like come up with this from scratch and I have to invent my own version of it. Like, no, copy, borrow, and then add your own spice to it, and make it your own. But there's so few things you actually have to build from scratch without, a little bit of help or support or things like that. And then there's some things, especially in the community industry, like there are really well-known processes like, hey, if you're implementing user groups, here's what works.
Yeah.
Follow this formula and implement this, and it should be successful at your organization as well. Now, you may have to make a few adjustments, for your specific goals or your specific audience or something. But in a lot of these cases, I was telling my team, like, don't go reinvent the wheel.
Yeah.
Go look at those resources out there. Go participate in the communities for community managers. Go watch those videos. Go listen to those podcasts. People have figured out how to do some of this stuff. And it's not to say there's not room for innovation, but you don't have to start at square one. You can probably start at square three.
This is such a good point. It's like I was talking to someone earlier today, and they're building a community from scratch. And I was like, well, when you build a community from scratch, and this person was talking about, well, all this customer's point of view and everything else. And it's like, that's one way to do it. I was like, but when I go and build a community from scratch for a B2B company, I already know what they need. There's no community. So I already know. And if it's a support community, I know exactly what to go do. Exactly. Now, I'm not saying I won't reach out to customers, but that's not the first thing I'm going to go do. I already know what they need. They have a problem somewhere or two with the product. So let's go figure out what those problems are and then start building, and to me, that's just, there's a formula that I'm not saying, hey, you need to use Chris Detzel's formula. What I'm saying is my formula has worked 3 or 4 places that I've been without fail, and people love it, and so there are 1,000 different ways to go about it, but there are some ways that it just work, and that's a good point. Hey, I want to build a user group. I'm coming to Nicole to say, do you have a proven way, or at least a methodology that has worked for you and the team? Yes, I do. This is what we did, that kind of stuff. And then, and I think that's a great point and extremely important,
Yeah. I think the other thing that's really important is asking questions. A lot of people, especially when they're in a growth phase of their career, sort of have that imposter syndrome, or I don't want to ask questions because I don't want to look dumb, or I don't want to ask questions because I don't want it to look like I don't know what I'm doing. And the thing I always tell people is the only time you're going to look dumb is if you didn't ask a question that you should have and you came in without the information you needed. And so it's like, always ask the question. It's just like elementary school. Chances are somebody else in the room also has that question and is also scared to ask it. And questions can provoke conversation, and they can provoke deeper analysis. And so it's always like, if you're not sure, go ask. And if the person you asked didn't know, go find someone that does. And it speaks back to the importance of building up that network and engaging with other professionals across the industry. Just like you and I are doing here. It's so critical to being successful in this field.
Yeah, it is. And I was thinking about when you said that, if you're not asking questions and you just kind of make some shit up, I'm not saying you should never make some shit up, but maybe sometimes. But if you know that your boss might know or other people in the industry might know, and you just take a crack at it, I guess that's good, but you could look really dumb, I mean, if you're not doing the research and you're not trying to ask those questions. And the other thing is for those that haven't built up the network, that's just part of the journey, right? You just have to start asking, get out there, and that's another skill, that will be under your belt. All of a sudden, you're going to have all these people helping you. If you spend, I've spent years networking with people doing this stuff. I mean, years. And so I got to the point, like, even with this Peers Over Beers, for example, now, I'll find somebody interesting like you. And I was like, she has some interesting things to say. She's been there for a long time. Why, I don't know if she'd be interested, but maybe she'll want to do the podcast with me. And so I just asked, and you're like, yeah, I would love to. We didn't know each other from anything, besides seeing each other on LinkedIn every now and then, or Twitter, I don't know, whatever, and you just have to ask. You just have to get out there and push to build that network up. I mean, if I didn't ask you, then I would never know you really, like I might get lucky and see you at a conference or something one day. Now, next time we see each other, or when we see each other, we're going to have a great discussion around whatever, you know what I mean? And so I think that's extremely important,
Absolutely. And it helps build your career in so many ways, right? It's not just the skill sets you build and things like that, but like, I've hired people because, I met that guy at a conference 3 years ago and I saw his talk and I know he's a really good presenter. And so when you've got a field of 100 applicants for a role,
they're going to stand out.
That person's going to stand out. You already know something about them. You know more information about them. You know a skill set that they have. And, it doesn't have to be presenting at conferences. We've used that example a couple of times, but it can be something as simple as just reaching out and being like, hey, would you have a 20-minute Zoom conversation? I mean, I try to do this multiple times a month. I will surf around both my company directory and then also LinkedIn or community things and just find somebody that I don't know that looks interesting. Like, can I grab 20 minutes with you and just learn about what you do? And every time it has resulted in a fun conversation. And oftentimes it's resulted in some further down the line things. I had one internal coffee conversation that turned into me getting my hands on a report I'd never had access to because I was like, data science, I'm interested. Let's talk about that. And once we started talking about what we did, it was like, oh, well, I could help you with this and I could do this. And, that worked out. Or, you reached out on LinkedIn and look, now I'm on a podcast sometimes.
Yeah. And hopefully you keep coming. I like that. You get me started thinking, and networking is more than just reaching outside of, your company. I like that a lot because one, when I first start at a company, I'll just start looking through the directory because I know the people that I want to talk with. I don't know them personally, but I know that, the smart people I need, the leaders I need. And so I'll probably have 40 or 50 conversations in 2 weeks, literally. But something else I've done at other companies and sort of this one, it seems like when somebody new comes now, they just want to talk to me because their boss says, go talk to Chris Detzel and these other people, right? But new people are fine, but they don't know the job yet, and so they don't know what they're going to do. I like what you said is, so what I like to do, and I did this previously, is every year I'd make an effort, like in January or February, to go talk to 10 or 15 new people I've never talked to or haven't talked to in a really long time that have probably been with the company, I don't know, 6 months or a year or whatever, just because they have knowledge of their job, knowledge of what's going on. So that, like you said, you get to learn about a report that you didn't know about that you're highly interested in, or you get to know about a place that maybe community or that you can help with, or they can help you with, or, you just don't know. And there's just lots of opportunity in your own organization to network and get to know it. And what happens is it's kind of, even for your staff, if your staff were to do something like that, all of a sudden they're going to start building these really cool relationships and maybe discover something that has never been done before and that is truly innovative and really cool, and that they want to try, and then they start trying it and, oh my God, this is amazing. Or maybe it's not, but at least you tried it. It opens the doors for a lot of different things, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. I think that is so true. And it's always amazing, when you run into somebody or you do one of those like sort of spontaneous coffees and like, I had no idea this thing was happening at the company,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like, how would I have ever known this program was here? But gosh, wouldn't it be great if we could work together on this or integrate the community somehow, or, bring these things together. And I can't tell you how many times that's turned into just really neat stuff happening.
Yeah. Sometimes
whether
it doesn't.
in my career, for the community, or whatever,
Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes it turns out to be something really cool. Sometimes it doesn't. But then, 3 months down the road or 8 months down the road, that person might reach out to you because they remember you reached out to them and they need this thing. And, it's just so important to, especially as community leaders, community managers, to do that. That's, sometimes it's not a strength of people, they just don't do that, but I feel like this particular job kind of should push us to do that one way or another,
Oh yeah. I mean, community plays into so many parts of the business. And, I don't know that it's completely unique to community, but I feel like community is pretty special in the way that it can connect with so many departments. And it's such a key thing to be well known across your organization and to know what other parts of the organization are doing. And as community leaders, one of our jobs is to be the expert in letting other people know what the community can do. I think that's something that I've seen come up sometimes. People say, well, no, nobody asked me to bring the community into this.
Yeah.
And most of the stuff that I bring my team into, I bring us into, right? I'll be in a meeting and say, hey, you know what? We can do this in the community to support that effort. Or, hey, why don't we republish that? Or why don't we pull this thing out of the community and source it over here? And it really is about sort of inserting that. And I think sometimes doing those kinds of networking, it can feel like when I have time for it, or it's a nice to have. And I would argue that it's one of the most important things for people to do, is just find that 20 minutes once or twice a week, maybe even just block time on your calendar, be like, every Thursday, I'm going to have a Zoom coffee with somebody.
Whoever it is.
Internal, external, whatever. I'm going to meet somebody new and learn a little bit from them.
Yeah, I think I find myself over the years pushing myself to do the uncomfortable a lot, and I think if you're not doing that, then you can't grow, I mean, it's like, I'll give you a small example. And, I'm very comfortable in presenting all things community. I'm really good at finding the stories and presenting the stories, talking about the stories and the value and things like that. What I'm not necessarily comfortable with is presenting on something new. So let's just say, I now own the Reltio Executive Council. And so, it's a bunch of executives and our executives and, and our customers, their executives, right? Getting together, talking about roadmaps and all these other things. And, one is, and maybe it's kind of this fear of, being in front of executives. It's not that I'm fearful of being in front of executives, but if I have to present something, to these people about something that's new to me, like this executive council, like, our CEO is like, who's going to present the information from, a readout, about the executive council? And I'm thinking, maybe somebody else will step up to that, but nobody else is going to step up to that.
You're the guy.
I mean? And it's not necessarily presenting in front of us. It's like, what's the content that I need to present in front of them? Like, that's the hard part for me, is like, what is it that I need to push on this PowerPoint that's probably only 2 slides or 3, and I'm like, I don't really know. It was good. Here's the readout. Here's, what we accomplished. And I don't know. So that to me is stepping out of my comfort zone, and people are like, even my CTO and founder, he goes, I said, oh, I was so nervous for that meeting. And he goes, what? You're nervous? Yeah, I get nervous. And, I want it to go well and all these things. And generally it does, but, you just have to, I feel like, be comfortable with being uncomfortable a lot. I mean,
Yes.
because with community, I think this is with a lot of jobs. So we're talking about community, but it's because it's a community podcast. But still, with what we do is just, to me, is sometimes or feeling uncomfortable a lot now. But being also smart and confident in what I do, But I don't know if you have any thoughts about that. But that's just one little example.
Well, I think, the thing that you said is you have to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. And I think it is so true that, like, if you are comfortable with what you're doing most of the time,
Yeah.
you're probably not growing very much, right?
Yeah.
And it's not that you have to be uncomfortable all the time. Nobody's going to function well if they're constantly in a high state of stress either. But I think one of the things that is really key for people that want to grow in their careers and expand their success and that kind of thing is you do have to challenge yourself, and you kind of got to teeter on the edge of uncomfortable more often than not. And it's okay to, like, go do something uncomfortable and then, like, take a break and go back to your comfort zone for a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
But you got to keep pushing yourself and getting out there. And whether that's presenting or learning something new or just putting yourself out there to network, it is so key, because most of the time what you're going to find out is that thing you were so scared of, like, it isn't that scary.
Yeah.
Right? You're going to learn something.
And these people are going to say, "Oh, you did
skill."
amazing. You did great." And then they start asking a bunch of questions and you're like, "Okay, well,
Yeah.
it's like,
I think we all think that, like, everybody's going to, like, call us out, or, like, other people know so much more than we do. And the reality is most people are learning as they go. Most people are building their skill sets as they go through. And, something I always tell my team members is, like, you weren't hired because you were going to know exactly what to do all the time.
Yeah.
You were hired because I believe in your ability to figure it out.
Yeah.
And that's really the key, is that it's about being able to ask the questions and think through something and go figure out the answer. It's not about rolling up to a job and knowing 100% of it from day one. If you roll up to a job and you know 100% from day one, you have taken a job that is too junior for you, and you should be taking a more senior job and getting paid more for it.
Yeah, you make a good point. And I forgot my train of thought, and I thought it was so good.
Oh, sorry. I didn't mean to derail you.
Not you. I had it, and then I kind of lost it. I derail the conversation usually. But I do think that's a good point, because, I think that when you look at being the expert in your field, you're going to know, especially in an organization, you're going to know 100 times more than the person that is in product, or most likely, or
Yep.
most of the organization. So have confidence in that piece, right? Like, okay, Nicole knows a lot. She's been doing this for a long time. But you know what? The second person that knows the most is you, or whatever. And maybe you know about certain areas that Nicole doesn't, or a little bit more, or those kinds of things. But I think, you just have, I think confidence is the key to kind of think about. Like, when I went to Imperva several years ago, I was used to, I had a boss that would really help me kind of think through certain things about community, because I wasn't the expert. But when I went to Imperva, I was the one starting the community from scratch. And so I was uncomfortable all the time, getting in front of leadership, and I'm thinking, holy shit, but then I was serious. Like, I had to present in front of the CEO's staff. I had to present in front of the entire company, especially in the beginning, because I had to get the community kind of rolling. And so what I had to do was, one is have confidence that I knew, for the most part, what I was talking about. I didn't know everything, but that was what I was afraid of, is that I might be stumped, or I might be, and then just practice, have that presentation, practice. Don't just throw this presentation together and just don't practice it, because if you do, you could fail and say ums a lot. I'd say ums a lot already, and but I think that's the key. Is a person told me one time, she said she was a leader, and she's my boss, or boss's boss, and I made a call of a vendor selection, and I said, hey, because somebody wanted to go with Salesforce, for example, communities, and I was like, well, and they were pushing hard, and I said, well, I don't think that's a good idea, and well, I wanted to say it wasn't a good idea, and I wasn't sure how to say that. And I was scared because that person was above me, right. And so what I did was, It's like, I'm going to take a chance. I have nothing to lose. I'm supposed to be the expert here. And I didn't want
Right.
Salesforce communities, whatever it's called now. I just didn't want it. It's like, that's not a good idea. The amount of work and time and effort and money. And so I did. I made the call. I said, I don't think we should go to Salesforce. This is why. And this is what I think we should go do. Look at these vendors and do this, and maybe even talk to Salesforce. And that leader said, Chris, that's exactly why we hired you, so that you would make decisions like this. You're the expert. From then on, I was the expert. You know what I mean?
How did that feel? What did that feel like for you?
It was awesome. It empowered me, to be the expert, and just, and then one last story on that piece, because I think it's important. So when I came to Reltio, I had confidence. I knew exactly what I was going to do, but what I didn't know is understood at the time was kind of the politics. And sometimes you want to play the politics, but you don't always want to go there and just, well, this is what I'm going to go do. This, that kind of stuff. And, or you just have a little bit of, what do I do? And I got on a call, and I was nervous with the CTO and founder of Reltio. And I was talking to him about it. I said, "Hey, what's the politics like? Because I want to go look at a vendor because I can just get this going really quick, but I just want to make sure." He goes, "Chris," "we hired you as the expert, and you just need to make a decision and go. We just want you to go because we need this up and running and as fast as possible." I say, that's all I needed. I was done. And within 3 or 4 months, the community was up and running and gone. You know what I mean? And so I think allow yourself to be that expert, have that confidence, and just go at it. I mean, if somebody gives you that much freedom and says, and they're leaders, you just have to go for it. I think. I don't know.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is all about confidence, and sometimes you got to fake it till you make it a little bit. Just take a deep breath and trust yourself, right? And chances are you will get somebody who'll say, "See, that's why we hired you."
Exactly.
And it can be scary, especially the first time you do it. I think back a few years ago when I was at a little bit more junior level, and the first time I had to go present to C staff. And man, we spent months getting ready for that and rehearsing. And I had 2 slides. It was my whole team, right? We were a team of managers, and we each had 2 or 3 slides for our section. And I spent so long preparing, getting ready. We went in, and it went so well. And now I do quarterly and sometimes monthly updates for C staff, and
That's great.
I still spend a fair amount of time preparing my slides and getting ready and being thoughtful about it. But we're not talking months, we're talking a week or 2 maybe to get ready. And so it does get better with practice, and it is scary the first time you do it, but it's such an important thing to go do and skill set to build up.
No, it is. One time I had to, when I was at Imperva, present in front of C staff, and I had all these, you only get supposedly 15 minutes. And so I put together 5 slides, and I practiced and said some stuff. And, when I finally got in there, I'm sweating, my pits are kicking, and everything else. And I'm thinking, oh my God, but I went in there with confidence and everything else. And I didn't even get through the slides. I went to one slide, and they just started asking me a bunch of question after question after question. But it was good because I pretty much knew all the answers. I knew kind of what they were. And I was like, well, I prepared these slides. It was good, but I didn't use them. But
and it's okay, right? Because sometimes the act of preparing the information gets it into your head, and then when they start throwing those questions at you, have you ever had that experience? Someone asks you questions and you start answering it, and you're like, "Wow, that sounds really good. I know what I'm doing here," right? And so sometimes it kind of goes back to where we started. When you're teaching other people things, that's oftentimes when you realize how much you actually know about a topic and how much expertise you actually have. I think it's really easy to forget sort of for somebody that doesn't do this at all and they're coming in fresh. Things that feel basic can sound really impressive and that kind of thing. Right. And, executives are definitely going to ask hard questions sometimes. And everybody's got different styles. Some people let you get through your slides and make your case and then ask some questions, and others will just sentence number 2, they're in there saying, "Okay, so what's the
that's right.
Talk me through the money on this. How is this going to impact the business? What's going on? Tell me your strategy." But I think you find that once you prepare it, the information, and if they're asking the questions, that's a great sign. It means that people are interested. It means that they're thinking about it. It means they want to hear what you think. And that's a really cool thing.
It is. And sometimes you're not going to know the answer, and you just got to be upfront. Don't make shit up. And, just, no, I'm serious. I had a question the other day, like a week or two ago, and my CEO goes, Chris, competitors, who are all of our competitors, in the space that has a community, and what are these communities doing, and blah, blah, blah. And I knew one competitor that had a community that is doing pretty well and has been doing it for a long time. But the others, I knew that we had some, but it's been a while since I looked at it. I said, I know one competitor, and that's everybody talks about, and that's really all I know. I was like, so I think if they've been doing it for a while and they've been doing pretty well, well, can we look at their SEO? Well, I was like, I'm pretty sure we can't, but I'll have to get back to you.
Yeah.
So
yeah, well, that's always the key. Maybe you don't know the answer, but let me go do a little looking into that, and I'll get back to you with that information.
And make sure you do. That's just part of it. You can't know everything, and he'll my CEO respected that, and I think that's the key. So,
Absolutely.
Well, Nicole, it's been good.
Yeah, it's always a pleasure, Chris. We always cover so much ground.
I think so. I think we've solved that problem of training and learning as you go and connecting with people. I mean, it's solved, hopefully.
Yeah, we've just solved all the problems right there.
Exactly. Well, hey, thanks for coming on to another Peers Over Beers, Nicole. I'm Chris Detzel, and
I'm Nicole Saunders, and thanks so much for having me again, Chris.
All right, thank you.